Okay, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Live from Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and I will be your friendly dungeon master today. I'm actually a little fur away from the mic right now. There we go. This video is going to be, I guess, as it's going to be in the vein of another video that I had shot in regard to the Delta Green campaign that we had wrapped up a couple weeks ago. We had another campaign that I was actually playing in that we were streaming on the channel that is no longer going. As with all the different campaigns that I'm running on the channel, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to give some sort of explanation as to why that's not happening anymore. This video is in relation to a Curse of Strahd campaign that I had been playing in. Curse of Strahd is a adventure published by Wizards of the Coast, and it's effectively kind of like the 5th edition, riff on some of the old Ravenloft adventures and campaign settings. For those who are unfamiliar with Ravenloft, Ravenloft is the gothic horror setting for Dungeons and Dragons, and it originated in an adventure called Ravenloft back in the 80s. And then it was, I believe there was a follow-up adventure, and then there was a box set published for 2nd edition AD&D. First one was for original AD&D. And then the box set was published for 2nd edition AD&D, and then it was published, there was a revised version of it published later in the life cycle of 2nd edition. And then in the course of 3rd edition, there was a third party that published a version of it. I actually think there was 3 versions of Ravenloft, 2 box sets and then a hardback. And then the 2nd edition was wrapped up, and in 3rd edition there was a third party that published the material. And then the most recent return was this Curse of Strahd adventure. So I was playing in that, and I was playing a fun little character who was a druid with a human feat to take the some levels in Warlock. It was my buddy Adam who was running it, and then I was playing with my buddies Chad and Dave. Both Chad and Dave are regulars on the channel, and Adam was playing in my Delta Green game. So the thing is that the game was actually played on every second Monday. Now, for those who may be regular on the channel or regular viewers of the channel, you may know that in my day job, I'm a lawyer, and I'd ask you don't hold that against me. But what that means is that for me to keep my kind of sanity and keep my workload under control, what I have done in the past and what I typically do with my practice is that I front load my week. I do a crazy amount of hours on Monday, Tuesday, and then most of Wednesday. I run a game on Wednesday night, and then on Thursday I work very long as well. And then Fridays, I usually only work 5 hours because I have front loaded my week. And that allows me to segue into the weekend and be ready to run the games that I'm running on the weekend. And what I found with Curse of Strahd, even with the fact that I was only playing for about 2 hours, is that it was taking about 3 hours of my time away from what I would otherwise be working and billing. And even though it was every 2 weeks, it stressed me out that I was not able to get that full, keep with my regular schedule, which is to bill, about 10 hours on Mondays. Like I tend to work very, very long days on those days. And what it was doing is it was stressing me out that I wasn't able to bill that time. And in addition to that, so the stress then was in turn affecting my enjoyment of the actual game. And on my actual podcast, I've been talking about that a fair amount, but seems like there's not quite always overlap between the channel and the podcast. So I wanted to leave an explanation as to why that suddenly is not happening on the channel. At the time of recording this, that game isn't being streamed on any other channel or either on Twitch or on YouTube or any other means. But if that changes between now and when, or if it changes at any point, what I'll do is I'll just change the description in the video, and I'll make a clear update, kind of in uppercase, so to let you know where you can watch that or continue to watch that game if it's something that you wanted to continue on. Just I won't be a player in that, which is not really really a loss. But I guess that was my first opportunity to play 5th edition, and I thought maybe in addition to announcing that this is it's not going to continue on, or that particular series of videos isn't continuing. Also to comment on the 5th edition in general, and also something I think I've learned about myself as a player in terms of the playing through the first part of Curse of Strahd. So first off, for playing 5th edition for the first time, there's some things that I really did. Well, one thing in particular that I really liked was I was playing a spellcaster, and honestly, I most often end up playing like paladins or fighters, like characters who are martial, and that's because I love playing those characters, and I love engaging in combat and role playing games, and those characters are the ones that can kind of keep doing their shtick for a longer time. Whereas magicians and mages and whatever, they often have more limited uses of their abilities. I decided to step out and try something different in this. I liked the wild shape rules, or I liked the way they read in 5th edition, so I was interested in seeing how those played at the table. Unfortunately, I'd left the campaign before I really got a chance to make use of that ability, but it did look pretty neat. But the one thing I did love as a spellcaster was the way that cantrips allowed me to continually be magical all the time. Like I had a cantrip called Druidcraft that allowed me to use a lot of small, minor, like nature-related druid stuff. And it was mostly just like evocative stuff for scenes, but I really love that. Like, as one of the things I love about running games is adding little elements of scenery to the different scenes we're describing, or things that are happening. When I'm describing the scene for my players as a DM, I love filling in those little details to try and the end result, I hope, is that it adds something to their experience. But even as a player, I love doing that stuff. I love describing how my spells look or things like that. So that was really, really cool. I also liked the ritual option. Like, there's in 5th edition D&D, and it's the most popular fucking role-playing game on the planet. So I imagine anyone who's actually watching this likely is already familiar with this. But for the very, for that one person who may not be, in 5th edition D&D, what you have is the ability with some spells, if you are the certain type of caster, if you are a ritual caster, you can cast certain spells as a ritual instead of using up one of your limited spell slots. And it takes longer. So you have to take, I think it's like 10 minutes per level, or maybe it's only a flat 10 minutes. But in any event, you take more time to do it, and then you can cast that spell again. And I love that. I really, really love that. Like, it gave... in our particular adventure, there was no real time constraint, so there was no reason for me to not keep using that stuff. And in particular, I used Detect Magic a lot. And that may seem abusive, but me having Detect Magic as a prepared spell in my repertoire of spells I could cast, I feel like that was enough. Like, that was a decision of mine. I'm like, I got to take this instead of something else. And if I wanted to have Cure Light Wounds in there as well, or Cure Wounds, I guess, in 5th edition version, I needed to, that meant that my very limited spells inventory or repertoire or whatever it was called, which was only like, I think 4 spells maybe, was one of them had to be this Detect Magic if I wanted to use it as a ritual. But anyway, like, I really loved it. Like, I thought that was a really from a player side, that was a lot of fun. I really, really loved that. One thing I wasn't as much of a fan of was how samey all the bonuses seemed to feel. Like, everyone seemed to have around the same bonus to their attack level. And that's like, I think that probably happens in a lot of role-playing games, from 3rd edition forward. But I don't know. That wasn't that. I felt like the numbers that I had as my bonus to hit and bonuses to getting these bonuses to hit didn't feel huge. So it felt a little swingy, which is probably a first level thing more than it is a thing that's indicative of the game. And it probably would smooth out as you get higher levels, but I wasn't crazy about that. But again, like, I guess that just comes with low level play in any game, really, is the swinginess with it. So maybe it's not really a problem. In terms of the structure of the game, I'm not going to talk about the GMing of the game, because like that's I think Adam did a fine job on it. I don't have any issues with how he presented the material or whether he got it wrong or anything like that. And he let at least half of his players, myself and Chad, were both like, we're long-term DMs and people who tend to be DMs rather than players. So it that can be a challenge, especially for someone who is newer to DMing. And Adam's been DMing for a few years, but I don't think he has the decades of history behind that me and Chad have. So I recognize that we're somewhat not problem players, but potentially challenging players. I tried not to be in this campaign, so I don't think I was, but there were a couple points in the in the adventure itself, where and this isn't, again, not Adam's the way he ran the game. It's just the nature of the module, and fuck, did it feel railroady. Like, it was just, and not only railroady, but like that there was only one clear option for going forward with it. And all I played through, for those who have played through the Curse of Strahd, we did the thing with the kids outside the house. And if you haven't played it, I won't spoil anything, but like our sort of like the mission thing was that we got, trapped into Ravenloft, and then we came into a town and we encountered these two creepy kids in the street. And kind of the adventure expects that that's what you're going to do, is then they present you a quest and you're going to go on it. And that felt really forced in the game. And then the whole adventure just felt very forced. It felt like a clear kind of railroad through from getting into the house to getting trapped in the house, and like, to a degree, there is that's what comes with horror play, is that there's part of the horror creating appropriate horror ambiances is disempowering the players, or limiting those chances or those choice. But it didn't really feel like there was a lot of stuff that really made the atmosphere, like, made it feel horrific. There was no twists that we were really encountering. And again, it's not that Adam didn't present it. I've read this adventure before, so I knew sort of what was coming. And there just isn't that stuff in there, and so it feels like it's an adventure. And I haven't played through the full thing, but it doesn't really feel like it's really a horror adventure. It feels like it's a D&D adventure that has, set dressing that, has kind of a Bela Lugosi era Dracula vibe to it. And like, that's, so I don't know. I mean, I mentioned that I think I learned something about myself, and like, I have mentioned on the channel before and on the podcast before how I don't really like running modules all that much. I find them often very confining, which is kind of funny because some of my campaigns this year are playing through modules, but or at least long-term plans. And as a player, I recognize the only games I've really played in the last little while have been Star Wars game that a friend of mine ran for the Fantasy Flight Star Wars stuff. And this one, the Curse of Strahd, and then my buddy Jason Hobbs, his Kalmata game, which is an open table game, and again, setting aside any DM concerns, just the way that I thought about what I could do in the adventures, I really enjoyed the open table stuff much, or the sandbox stuff, a lot more than the adventure stuff. There's the argument, or not argument, but discussion about, like, story focus versus open world focus. And and the open world is more of like an emergent storytelling kind of thing. And I enjoy that. I enjoy that so much more than I do playing through a story. I don't, the way I phrased it in the podcast before, like, if I really want to go through someone's story, I've got other ways that I think do a better job. There's other medium that does a better job of doing that, like movies and TV and novels or short stories, where I am, engaging with the material and then going through on a story. I don't really want that in a role-playing experience. I want to have the freedom to make more decisions in terms of where the story goes, and then have me deal with the consequences of the decisions that I've made. So I think that maybe, like, setting aside the fact that the reason I'm not playing in that game anymore is because of timing. It's just, we tried trying to find a time later in the week that might work better, but it just didn't work out with the other players' schedules. So I'm done with that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's I know now in myself that I much prefer that style of gameplay. I would much rather see where the adventure is going to take me in terms of the decisions I make of where I want to go and what I want to encounter and how I want to engage with it. And there's going to be a degree, there's always going to be a degree of, like, shit, now I've got to go and do, if I want to, say, like, explore a dungeon ruin or something like that, or we've got to deal with an invading force or something like that. Like that's still going to be story, and it's still going to be something that's more, that's more that will have consequences, but and an impact on my agency as a player, like, of what I can actually do. But the thing I find up with the open world games is that if I have the option of walking away from it, I will buy that. I'll I'll find it a more credible reason to go along with the story. Like if there isn't, if there's a clear and obvious choice of do this or there's no story, that I bounce hard off of that. Like I really find like I just and I'm not going to be as engaged with it. And again, like I did a fun playing, and Adam did a fine job presenting the adventure. It's just that the nature of that adventure, I don't want to be led by the nose through someone else's story. Like I don't need. I can read the adventure if I want to do that. You know, what I want is I want to have the story feel like, you know, and this is part of the balance we always have as DMs, is having to, you know, improvise stuff sometimes and have it seem as if this is what we planned all along, right? You're throwing down the railroad tracks ahead of this charging train. Because at the end of the day, all that matters is what like the story ends up being whatever happens at the table. It's not what's written in the adventure. It's not what's written in the DM's notes and whatever. And I think that that's definitely the camp of DM I fall in. And I'll run some pretty story driven one shots as well. But you know, and I've played in story driven one shots as well too. I played in. I didn't care for the Cypher system itself, but my buddy Sean ran a one shot that's basically like a Rogue One style Star Wars kind of adventure, but using the Cypher system. That adventure was fucking great. You know, it was a one shot, so we knew exactly what we were doing. We had clear purpose, and it wasn't a matter of like me having. It was an obvious decision, and I was fine with the way that was presented. But the way that Curse of Strahd gets you to engage, just I don't know, wasn't for me. You know, I'm not, and I should say as well, like if that is your preferred style of play, that's totally fine. Like I don't mean to make it sound as if you know, are doing it wrong by any means. Everyone gets their own things out of this hobby. And that's what's so great about this hobby, is it can be so many different things to so many different people. For myself, ain't for me. I want to have a lot more agency in what I could do. I wonder whether I would have enjoyed the, whatever the most recent one was, the Asarerak based one, the Tomb of Annihilation, I think it's called. I may have had more fun with that, but anyway, so as a result of that, you know, and for those reasons, we're not going to be continuing to stream the Curse of Strahd game on here. Again, if I do find that it is being streamed elsewhere, I will, you know, I'll put it on. I'll put a link to wherever that is in the description of the video. But otherwise, that is why I guess I am free of the Curse of Strahd, and I have now said bye-bye to Barovia. So anyway, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns about this, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can reach me on Twitter at Dungeon Musings, or you can shoot me an email, and my email address is dungeonmusings@gmail.com. Otherwise, I hope this finds you all well. Happy gaming, and I'll see you again next time.